Citizens march in Colombia to demand widespread social reforms from the government. Dominica's opposition continues its attempts at stopping Friday's elections. And the COP25 summit on climate change enters its third day. Hello and welcome to Telesur English. I am Estefania Bravo and this is from the South. Thousands of Colombians are marching to Bolivar Square after the main strike committee announced that talks with President Iván Duque have stalled. The protesters are rejecting the government's neoliberal proposals, including massive privatization, and demand an end to the killing of environmental leaders, social activists, and former FARC members. Demonstrators are also condemning a reform that is being debated in Congress to increase the retirement age and decrease salaries for young people.
We are part of this strike on December 4, and we call on all workers to support and show solidarity for the national strike, reject Duque's policies, and those lawmakers who want to approve laws against the people. We will have several marches in the city of Barranca Bermeja and join other human rights organizations and unions. We will stay here all day to protest.
Our correspondent in Bogota, Adriana Sibori, has more.
Colombia mobilized on Wednesday. In the capital, people have come from different areas towards the center of the city. We can see students, workers, healthcare professionals, among others, marching here. These people are demanding a stop to a proposed austerity package by the government, which would, among other things, privatize pension funds, lower taxes for large companies, and implement labor reforms to establish different minimum wages, depending on the province. After 14 days of mobilizations, Colombians are asking that any reform consider the needs of workers. They want an end to privatization and that anti-corruption laws be created. Campesinos are also making their voices heard as they demand support for responsible farming, the renegotiation of the free trade deal, and better policies to protect the environment. But one of the most important demands is that the 2016 peace agreements be respected, as their implementation has stalled due to the government indifference. As a result, over 700 social leaders and former combatants have been killed since the agreements were signed. The people want an end to the killings, and they want to hold open and direct talks with the government. Until then, mobilizations will continue in hopes of seeing deep social reforms implemented in Colombia.
We thank Adriana Sibori for that report. Election observers are currently in Dominica ahead of the country's December 6 polls. A three-member team from the Caribbean Community, or CARICOM, will meet with electoral officials, leaders of political parties, and other stakeholders. On election day, the mission will monitor the electoral process from the opening of the poll through the voting process, the closing of the poll, and the counting of the ballots. Members of the Regional Security System, RSS, are also visiting the island on a peacekeeping mission on the heels of fiery opposition protests calling for electoral reform. Meanwhile, the Organization of American States has sent a mission to the island. OAS officials met with the Prime Minister and Minister of Foreign Affairs, and the former Prime Minister of the Bahamas, Hubert Ingraham, signed the agreement of immunities and privileges with Dominica's ambassador to the OAS.
Election day in Dominica will be December 6th. They can try what they want, they can do what they want, they can jump high, they can jump low. There will be elections in Dominica on December 6th, ladies and gentlemen. And we are going out. We are going out on election day and we are voting the Dominica Labour Party back in office.
The U.S. State Department seems to be stepping up its interest in what it calls the promotion of democracy in the Caribbean as the election dispute unfolds in Dominica. It is sending the Undersecretary for Political Affairs, David Hale, to the Bahamas and Haiti this Thursday and Friday. The State Department says he will meet the Prime Minister of the Bahamas, Hubert Minnis, to discuss disaster relief after Hurricane Dorian. And in Haiti, he will discuss the current crisis with President Jovenel Moïse and the need for a functioning government to restore order.
endorsed.
Our correspondent Alejandro Kirk has the latest from Rosal.
Well, what happened is seemingly there was a meeting last night at this town of Salisbury where the opposition decided to block roads all over the country today in order to prevent the elections from taking place on Friday. This is because they failed in motion an injunction to stop the elections on a legal basis at the Dominica's High Court, and now probably being debated at the Appeals Court in St. Lucia, from where we have no news. Nobody has news actually, because I've been asking around about what happened there. So legal ways failed. They are trying this other way, as announced by the opposition leader Lennox Linton on Monday. So what happened there is that a group of members of the Labour Party went over to clear the rubbish and the red cars that they had put on the way to block the road. And after few exchanges in some insults, they never got into a real violence. With the help of police, they negotiated a settlement, and the road was finally cleared peacefully, with the usual exchange of accusations between the supporters of the opposition, the blues, the way they call them here, and the reds, who are the supporters of the Labour government actually ruling the country. So it didn't go further than that, but we hear that in Marigot and other places, blockades are bigger than this, and the situation continues to be sort of tense, although you can't feel that tenseness right here in Rosso. This is a peaceful country. It's a small country. Groups, when they face each other, are composed by at most 50 people. This is not real crowds. The danger of becoming violent or even armed, so far it does not look to be feasible. But you never know when social processes start. You don't know where it ends.
We'll be right back. Stay with us. Welcome back to From the South. Since Mauricio Macri took power at the end of 2015, Argentina's economy has shrunk by between 2 and 3% every year, except in 2017 when it saw a very slight recovery. The first challenge for the new president, Alberto Fernandez, will be to reactivate the economy.
The end of the neoliberal cycle leaves the country in recession, and with incomes in free fall for workers, pensioners, and the most vulnerable sectors of society.
The main goal would be to put money into people's pockets so they can spend again. The 20% loss of purchasing power is outrageous. There is no other country with that. And it has obviously a huge impact on economic activity.
Some economists say that inflation in 2019 will be around 55%, the highest rate since 1991. The other challenge for the incoming administration will be controlling prices.
The first thing is to change the analysis that Macri's Cambiemos government had, which was fixated on the fiscal deficit. I would say the problem in Argentina has more to do with the lack of dollars. This needs intensive work. We need to de-dollarize the whole economy. That means not letting utility prices climb out of control because of the devaluation of the currency and stopping the continual increase in fuel prices.
Price increases combined with falling incomes led to a drop in consumption, which had a big effect on industry. Thousands of small and medium-sized companies went out of business, and unemployment is likely to be 12% at the end of the year.
Businesses cannot plan to expand production or take on more staff unless they believe they can sell more. That is the basic condition for growing the business.
Chosa also says that the problem of precarious employment needs to be addressed.
We have about 1/3 of the population in informal jobs. We have to break with this. Of the 1,250,000 jobs created in the last 4 years, 90% were informal jobs. So another challenge should be to formalize the labor market.
The incoming government's plan includes reducing interest and capital payments on the debt, which has increased exponentially during Macri's government.
Recounts have been carried out in 5 out of 14 electoral districts across Trinidad following the local government election on Monday. The Elections and Boundaries Commission confirmed that requests were made for recounts in Marabella West, Cocoyia, Valencia West, Mayaro, Guayaware, Ausonville, Tunapuna, and 5 of the 13 polling stations in La Romaine. The ruling People's National Movement, or PNM, has been confirmed the winner in 4 of the 5 of the districts. The United National Congress won La Romaine with a difference of 457 votes. However, it is not yet clear if the result will remain the same. In Chile, social organizations are presenting a proposal to the Constituent Assembly that will create the country's new constitution. The plan was drafted at the Summit of the People that is taking place in Santiago, parallel to the COP25 UN Climate Summit. The agreement to form a Constituent Assembly came after weeks of anti-government protests. The country's current constitution was passed in 1980 during the military dictatorship of Augusto Pinochet. And workers' unions have met to discuss new protests against the government's economic and social model. Organizations are demanding swift action against climate change with a large protest scheduled for Friday. Several meetings and debates are taking place until December 7th as part of the Summit of the Peoples. Some countries never tire of trying to interfere in Venezuela. Now they are using the long-forgotten Rio Treaty for reciprocal military assistance, but the Venezuelan people are having nothing of it.
The people once again filled the streets of Caracas to reassert Venezuela's sovereignty, while a group of foreign ministers met in Bogota to further their plans to intervene in Venezuela. This time, they used the Rio Treaty of Reciprocal Assistance, but these people are resisting with music and conviction.
Let them come to Venezuela and see all these faces full of emotion, joy, humility, and honesty. This is Venezuela. It's not war, it's peace. We want peace because we are love, affection, and determination. Nobody can intervene in Venezuela because we are standing firm. If they want to come and give us a hug, like we do with our brother countries.
The Rio Treaty was signed in 1948. It aims to give help to countries that are attacked by others. Paradoxically, it is now being used to attack Venezuela again. And again, they are failing. Because Venezuela withdrew from the treaty in 2012 under Hugo Chavez, and its decisions on Venezuela are null and void. It also has no effect. Because Venezuela has withdrawn from the OAS, the Venezuelan people, united with the military, no longer accept submission to the interests of the North.
We are marching to say, out with Trump, and to defend our Venezuela. We have to defend our country, which is the best thing we have.
One opposition member of the National Assembly proposed that Venezuela rejoin the Rio Treaty, another empty gesture, because the Assembly is still in breach of the Constitution, and its decisions have validity only for the media. And if the Assembly does overcome its breach of the Constitution, it will have to send such proposals to President Nicolás Maduro for his approval.
They should look after their own countries. All countries should be free and independent, and respect each other's sovereignty. We just ask for respect. We don't interfere with anyone, and they shouldn't interfere with us.
At its final destination, the march was greeted by participants in the International Communication Congress, where journalists and others from over 40 countries are meeting to defend sovereignty and self-determination for all the peoples of the world.
The people are mobilizing today to reject the attempts by a group of countries who think they are the gendarmes of this continent and want to impose their views on Venezuela. Venezuela rejects the use of outdated, redundant institutions like the Rio Treaty. They are only using this because they failed at the OAS. The Lima Group has failed, and even the direct pressure of the United States against the people of Venezuela has failed.
Chile and Colombia, in the middle of popular uprising against their governments, are two of the countries trying to use the Rio Treaty to intervene in Venezuela. Maybe it is a smoke screen to conceal their problems at home.
We'll be right back. Stay with us. Welcome back to From the South. The COP25 UN Climate Change Summit continues in Madrid, Spain. Our correspondent in Madrid, Adriana Cardoso, has the latest.
Wednesday marks the third day of the UN Climate Summit being held here in Madrid. On this day, a report was presented from the Global Carbon Project Association saying that 2019 will be a record year in CO2 emissions to the atmosphere. According to the report, CO2 emissions increased by 0.6 in 2019. And in light of economic forecasts from different countries, the growth of the emissions will continue to be between 1 and 1.5 over the next years. This data concerns many since it directly threatens the Paris Agreement, through which different countries committed themselves to reduce the rise of global temperatures. But in order for this to occur, CO2 emissions need to be drastically cut. In other news, we know that the climate change activist Greta Thunberg reached Lisbon on Tuesday. She says she will be at the demonstration organized by various organizations, activists and environmental movements in Madrid on Friday. This demonstration is part of a number of events that make up the Counter Climate Summit, which aims to maintain focus on ways to fight climate change in the Global South and also criticize some of the action of this summit.
We thank Adriana for that report. People in Paris, France are preparing for Thursday's massive anti-government strike. The protests dubbed the Black Thursday are the latest round of strikes slated to paralyze the country's railroads and bring thousands to the streets. This in an effort to overthrow a pension reform proposed by President Emmanuel Macron. The strike comes as France has been rocked for over 1 year by protests from the Yellow Vest movement, who have been taken to the streets on a weekly basis to demand Macron's resignation and widespread social reforms.
Surely it will be a very empty day. We expect sales of zero. I'm telling you, it will be exceptional, especially since we have loyal customers instead of customers who are just passing by.
The corruption trial of former Algerian political leaders and businessmen has started in Algiers in the absence of defense lawyers. On trial are 2 former Algerian prime ministers, senior political leaders, and automotive industry tycoons who are all accused of corruption and abuse of office. The trial was adjourned on Monday and the defense had vowed to boycott further hearings, citing the politicization of the case.
Today the lawyers decided to boycott the hearing and the court president decided to continue the trial of all the defendants.
And presidential candidates in Algeria have started campaigning for the upcoming elections, despite calls from protesters to stop them. People have remained divided in Algeria, with some supporting the interim government and many others opposing the current leadership, as well as the December 12th elections, saying that the entire political class needs to go. Iranian President Hassan Rouhani has called for the release of any unarmed and innocent protesters arrested over the past weeks. Several people have been arrested during often violent protests against hikes in the price of gasoline. Tehran's leaders blamed thugs linked to their opponents in exile and the United States, Israel and Saudi Arabia for the unrest. Life has become harder for Iranians since last year when U.S. President Donald Trump withdrew the U.S. from the 2015 nuclear deal and reimpose sanctions that have hurt Iran's oil-based economy.
But those who were not guilty or those whose crime is not major, they have to be treated with mercy and they should be released. We haven't closed the windows of negotiations. If the US are ready to lift the sanctions, we are ready to talk and negotiate it, even at the level of heads of the 5+1 heads countries. And we have clearly declared that before.
Women's organizations are slamming the Ecuadorian government's failure to address the decriminalization of abortion in the cases of rape in the Constitutional Court. They're also rejecting cutbacks towards the protection of women in the 2020 budget.
The National Assembly passed several reforms to the Organic Penal Code in September 2019. However, they neglected to explore the decriminalization of abortion. They subsequently repealed 3 articles and voted for a transitional provision, which women's groups say impedes their constitutional rights. One of which relates to abortion, and they're urging the Constitutional Court to address it. But the court says its hands are tied unless the Assembly approves these policies.
The court basically said this is not the right way to demand changes to our abortion laws. There hasn't been a declaration, but it said it will analyze the request to see how it affects the Constitution. This ultimately leaves an open door towards decriminalizing abortion in cases of rape.
Women's organizations also reject cutbacks in the 2020 budget, which completely ignores the need to create policies to treat violence against women.
It's 17 times cheaper to invest in sex education than it is to take care of unwanted pregnancies or deal with the consequences of an abortion. That's according to a joint study by the United Nations and Ministry of Health. So the government knows that this will save lives, but they've decided not to invest at all.
Although the authorities haven't responded to the concerns of women's groups, some of the government's lawmakers have their own personal interests towards solving Ecuador's social problems.
It's important to analyze the situation with common sense and outside of politics. While we have a regime that speaks to social equality and in women's defense, they propose the opposite in these reforms. They've given more to police and national security than to women and education.
Women's organizations say the teen pregnancy prevention bill remains unfunded, and the budget to treat with the prevention of violence against women has been reduced to 84%. All this in a country where every 72 hours a woman is violently murdered just because she is a woman.
And with that, we've come to the end of this news brief. You can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. And also join us on social media. We are on Facebook, on Twitter, and on Instagram. For Telesur English, I am Estefania Bravo. Until next time.